Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Ms. Duckworth, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 57, the nays are 43. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President would be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief. Tomorrow I will be bringing two bills before the Senate. They both have to do with the shutdown and Congressional Bay. The first bill is the No Shutdown Paychecks Act. The second bill is the Withhold Member Pay During Shutdowns Act. The first bill would provide that as long as we're shut down, and I'll explain why in a moment. As long as we're shut down, no member of Congress can be paid. And the money will not be reimbursed at a later date or repaid at a later date. The second bill to address any 27th Amendment concerns will say during the shutdown, members of Congress will not receive their pay, but their pay will be escrowed and they will receive it after the government is opened back up. Look, we're in day 36. Like you, Mr. President, I've heard a lot of rumors about we're that close to reaching an agreement. We've been that close for a week. Frankly, I hope I'm wrong in saying this, but I don't think we're really that close. I wish we were, and I hope we are. But I think we're going to be in the shutdown a while longer. That doesn't give me any joy to say that. In the meantime, none of our staffs are being paid. No federal employees are being paid. I got some numbers in this morning that federal workers have had to borrow $365 million so far during this 36-day shutdown in order just to pay their rent. Our military is only being paid partially. Our air traffic controllers are not being paid. People who receive SNAP payments are only being partially paid. I don't think anybody wants to see anybody go hungry in America, and that's not a partisan statement. I think that's a bipartisan statement. There's precedent for this, Mr. President. Some may say, well, this violates the 27th Amendment. I don't think it does. That's why I'm offering two different flavors of bills. But in 2013, President Obama did the same thing that I'm doing now. They were in a shutdown, and President Obama supported legislation that said, if you don't open up government by this certain date, then you're going to lose your paychecks. And guess what? Members of Congress had an epiphany, and they found religion. They had a Damascene moment, and they opened up government. And that's all this bill will do. I'm not trying to grandstand. I wasn't going to bring this bill. When I got back here Monday, I heard all the rumors like everybody else that we were close. And I hope we are close, but we're not close enough. And so I'll offer these bills tomorrow, and people can vote yay or they can vote nay. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield to my friend, Senator Blumenthal, if that's appropriate. Yeah, I don't yield, Mr. President. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
The senator from Connecticut,
I appreciate the senator from
where the Senate is in
Louisiana.
a roll call,
I would
quorum
ask
call.
that the quorum call be vitiated.
without objection.
I appreciate the senator from Louisiana yielding to me, and I'm here with Senator Padilla because we're leading a group of colleagues to talk on the floor of the Senate about a right of American people that was exercised in overwhelming numbers yesterday, the right to vote. And it was a enormously heartening and encouraging and inspiring example to us of good citizenship and interest in the electoral process. But we're here because the right to vote is increasingly under assault by this administration. Systematic, strategic, relentless assault by an administration that wants to discourage the exercise of that right to vote and to degrade the protections of it that many Americans take for granted because they are so ingrained in our system. What this administration has done overall in seeking to impound election equipment, collect voter information, and intrude on privacy and discourage election workers by creating fear and intimidation, not to mention dismantling the election protection mechanisms in the CISA and voting rights section of the Department of Justice, the cybersecurity infrastructure and security program. These kinds of measures create a real and present danger to our election process. And it began literally with President Trump pardoning the January 6th rioters. Remember, they not only assaulted the Capitol, but their purpose was to stop certification of a lawful transition of power that resulted from the vote. It was an effort to undermine the vote. In the face of many of these actions, we need to rely on the courts. They are the bulwark that in many instances will protect us. We are dependent on organizations that are willing to go to court, and we need to support them with resources. One example, on March 25th, 2025, President Trump issued an executive order, 14248. Among other things, it attempted to impose on the states new documentation requirements for mail-in voter registration and voting procedures. Just one example of this administration's assault on the right to vote. And it probably went under the radar so far as most public attention was concerned, but it was real, it was potentially destructive and damaging to the right to vote. And thankfully, Judge Kolar-Catelli of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia knew our laws well enough that she rightfully held that this executive order was so patently illegal, so flagrantly unlawful, and a blatant violation of our Constitution, carefully crafted separation of powers, that she struck down that executive order. And she wrote, quote, "The states have initial authority to regulate elections. Congress has supervisory authority over those regulations, but the president does not feature at all," end quote. And that's why Judge Kolar-Catelli found that Trump's executive order, quote, "violated the Constitution by usurping power over federal election procedure that is vested in Congress and the states, not in the president," end quote. Sounds to me like the President of the United States might need a civics lesson, or at least a reread of the Constitution. The framers regulated elections in the manner on purpose, part of a carefully crafted compromise between state and federal legislative power. They did it in this manner to serve a specific end, which was a balancing of responsibility that accorded states their proper sovereign control over elections cast in their borders. They are sovereign. Our states remain sovereign as they were then, and their electors are entitled to respect in state and federal elections under rules that are set by sovereign states. And that compromise is sound public policy, just as it was when our framers propounded it. It's right that states and communities, not the president, should determine, in the best instance, how best to conduct elections. And it's right that in situations when uniform national election standards are necessary, those determinations are made deliberately by a large body of elected officials directly representing their local communities in Congress. As the judge said, the president doesn't feature at all. More importantly, the framers' diffusion of power over elections divided both among the states and within the branch of the federal government closest to the people, namely the Congress, is one of our nation's most powerful safeguards against autocracy. They were wary of an overbearing executive. They had just fought to be free of a monarchy. They explicitly avoided giving any power to the president in the realm of elections. The framework they created establishes a decentralized structure where it is difficult for any single individual or entity to unduly influence or wield unchecked power over elections. No kings. That was their mantra. Literally, they had just overthrown a king. No single authority to control elections and potentially bring to bear another authoritarian ruler. But now, this president has moved us toward a totalitarian regime, and there is no more salient or significant aspect of his effort than the destructive assault on our election system. A system where one person alone can decide how elections are run is the definition of a tyranny. Russia has a constitution. Other nations like Russia have constitutions. But elections are rigged. And whether it's China, Russia, Hungary, totalitarian regimes have one ruler. It may not be called a king, but it is a ruler who controls the election process. And lo and behold, 90% of the voters in the old Soviet Union, now in Russia, all decide that the guy in power is to be retained. That's no accident. It's the result of totalitarian control over elections. And that is why this judge's ruling is so profoundly momentous. The voters of California, Virginia, New Jersey, and New York made their voices heard yesterday. And they were saying as well, no kings. They exercised the right to vote in tremendous numbers. In our state of Connecticut, towns where Republican first select people or mayors were in power for decades saw a move from red to blue. What's more important than red to blue is overwhelming numbers of people came to the polls because they were angry and anxious about our democracy and about affordability, about paying the rent, affording groceries, paying for electricity, and yes, health insurance. They were looking at the open enrollment exchanges for whether they could afford health insurance, and they saw premiums doubling and tripling, and they were hit by that sticker shock. And it made them fearful and outraged about what was happening to health care, as well as everything else they were paying to afford, and they couldn't afford health care and everything else that they needed for their families, and that was a factor as well. And so this outpouring of anger and anxiety that we saw on the issue of affordability was an exercise of the franchise that this administration wants to undermine and undercut and eventually eviscerate. So we need to elevate the judges. Let's name this one. Judge Kolar Catelli of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Judge Kolar Catelli is a hero in sustaining and protecting the rule of law, in preserving free and open election by striking down an executive order that very simply, egregiously overrides state sovereign authority. Now, I will say states' rights used to be the province of members of this body who sought to protect segregation. Maybe they were endeavoring to stop federal law enforcement, and the use of states' rights as a sword or a shield had limits, and the courts limited them. But in this instance, there is no excuse and no precedent that permits the President of the United States to take over our election system. And I call on my colleagues in this body to stop rubber stamping his usurpation of our authority. We're the ones, along with states, that have that responsibility. Congress was specifically chosen to protect our election system when it came to federal supervision because we are closest to the people, and we should zealously guard that authority because it is essential to our constitutional structure. I know that a lot of this may seem abstract or opaque, but it goes to the core of our constitutional system, and I call on my colleagues to protect our authority and state officials to safeguard theirs, because it is a matter of our democracy, our freedom, and our right to vote. I note that my colleague, Senator Padilla, is here. I started this floor block, but I'm proud that he and I have worked together on enlisting our colleagues. He is a major champion of election rights. He is one of the leaders in our body that has worked zealously to protect that right. And I'm proud to be standing here with him in this cause. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, let me begin by thanking my good friend, Senator from Connecticut, Senator Blumenthal, for his partnership, not just on these issues and a lot of matters before the Judiciary Committee generally. But we and others have come to the floor today to celebrate yesterday. Mr. President, yesterday, Americans and states across the country came out to participate in a tradition as old as the nation itself, casting their ballots in a democratic election. And while ballots are still being processed and final results will come in the coming days, it's safe to say that thanks to the hardworking and unsung heroes known as election workers and volunteers across the country, these elections largely went off smoothly and successfully because of their work. In states like Virginia and New Jersey, we saw record turnout. Because of their work in cities like New York, we saw the highest turnout there since 1969 in a municipal election. From a race for state Supreme Court justices in the state of Pennsylvania to a statewide proposition in my home state of California, Americans showed up in overwhelming numbers to say in one loud and clear voice that they've had enough. The question after an election is always, so what message do the voters say? What was the mandate when it comes to a high turnout election with larger than expected margins? The takeaway is this: enough of the Republican chaos, enough of the power grabs, enough of the corruption, and enough of Trump's billionaire assault on working families. That's the power of democracy. When we're able to send that type of a message, the people send that type of a message, that loud of a message, by exercising their right to vote. But even after the success of last night, let's also be clear about this. One free and fair election does not guarantee the next one. We have to fight to ensure future elections. We have to keep asking ourselves, what do we do now, between now and next November, to protect the next election? Because at this very moment, the president and his allies are doing everything they can to rig the rules of the game. The reality is that at some point over the last couple of months, the president came to a harsh realization. We've known his policies have been bad ones. We've known they've been harmful. He's figured out his policies are also now very unpopular. Prices on everything from groceries to housing to energy bills are going up. Healthcare premiums are spiking. SNAP benefits are being cut. But for the billionaire class, things are just fine because Trump gave them the tax cut that they wanted, and somehow there's now funding for a ballroom. Americans, though, are fired up. They're angry at a president and a party that are looking out for themselves more than they're looking out for the country as a whole. But rather than change their policies that are causing such harm, instead of changing their policies before the midterm elections, President Trump and Republicans would rather change the rules. And we have a responsibility to sound the alarm before it's too late. Let me revisit my home state of California, where voters came out in big numbers to pass Proposition 50 by a wide margin. Why? We're not celebrating a mid-decade redistricting. Proposition 50 passed because they've been waiting to respond to the madness. Because Donald Trump is the one who forced California's hand. In between trying to apply a little gold covering to every square inch of the White House that he can, that hasn't been demolished, and pardoning billionaire criminals, President Trump's been making some phone calls. So's the vice president. They called GOP state lawmakers to redraw congressional maps and to silence Democratic opposition. It began when President Trump called Texas Governor Greg Abbott and told him to find him 5 more Republican seats. When I first heard that, it sounded eerily similar to the call we all heard about from 2020 when President Trump called the Secretary of State of Georgia and demanded that he find him 11,000 more votes. when we knew what Texas was going to do, a midterm partisan redistricting, Californians knew right away that enough was enough. And that's what yesterday was all about, leveling the playing field. And by the way, at any moment, Republicans can actually end this redistricting arms race altogether, because there's more than just chatter about Ohio and Florida and Indiana and Missouri and others. To end that arms race, I invite my Republican colleagues to join us in supporting true nationwide redistricting reform. And yes, we do have a bill to do just that. Independent redistricting, once every 10 years after the census, which is when it should be properly done. But no, Republicans would rather try to cling to power by changing the rules of the game. And it's why just yesterday, the White House issued yet another threat, this time a threat to issue another illegal executive order to ban mail-in voting. And it's why, as races are being called last night, and Trump knew things were going to go his way, that the president took to social media to demand Republicans kill the filibuster, to ban mail-in voting and other laws that are designed to keep our elections secure, but make it easier for eligible United States citizens to exercise their fundamental right to vote, to cast their ballot and have their ballot be counted. That is what we're up against. But wait, there's more. At the same time, the Trump Department of Justice has its hands full. Boy, do they. The Department of Justice has sent letters to at least 40 different states demanding information about their voter maintenance policies and practices. And they filed lawsuits against 8 states, and probably growing, including California, who have refused to hand over the personal, private information of voters. Kind of reminds me of a game that kids sometimes play. Heads I win, tails you lose. What the administration is saying is, you can give us your voter rolls so we can start systematic purging, or you can choose to protect voter information, but we'll see you in court, and we're going to claim voter fraud anyways. But wait, there's more. Donald Trump is also staffing up the White House with like-minded election deniers and conspiracy theorists, hinting at future actions that could disenfranchise even more voters. Of course, the president's been slandering places like California in our elections practices for years, and he did it once again just yesterday on Election Day. His words, not mine. The president lies and shouts fraud without a shred of evidence. He didn't wait till Election Day. He started prior to, because he knew he was going to lose. The White House restated its threat to issue a new, even more illegal executive order to ban mail-in voting, despite the fact that the president himself votes by mail. And on top of all these brazen efforts, they're laying the groundwork for the nuclear option once again. Think about what we've seen over just the last few months. Troops deployed domestically into cities in response to pretend rebellions that only exist in Donald Trump's mind. You know, going back to this Proposition 50 in California, I was there with the governor, other state leaders, when we first launched the effort. We held a rally to announce a new legal, democratic ballot initiative, small d democratic, because ultimately it was going to be up to the voters to decide. The day of that rally, the day of that kickoff, don't tell me it was a coincidence. who shows up at the doors and the perimeter of this building? Armed Border Patrol agents to try to intimidate people coming in to participate in the kickoff and the announcement. Now, the election deniers in the administration have been lobbying for the White House to declare a fake national emergency to try to seize unconstitutional powers over our elections. So I raise all these examples as a shocking reminder of how quickly Donald Trump is moving to upend our free and fair elections. But the reality is, none of this should be surprising. I know it's not to me, because he's done it before. It's been 5 years since Donald Trump first tried to steal the 2020 election. And since then, he's only grown more extreme. We all agree it's important to protect the security and integrity of our elections. But even at a moment in history like this, I remind myself American democracy was here long before MAGA, and it'll be here long before MAGA Republicans are no longer in power. But it will not be by accident. Members of Congress can and must stand up to every one of Trump's unconstitutional power grabs over state election authority. I'm committed to doing my part. If the Trump White House tries to declare some fake national emergency to create a pretense for federal intervention, I will force a vote here in the Senate to stop it. But no matter what happens, voters cannot lose hope. That's what's most important. We need Americans to keep showing up each and every election and show up in overwhelming numbers, just as they did yesterday, just as they did for hundreds of years prior, and make clear that it will be the people and only the people who will determine the future of our democracy. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
President,
The senator from Rhode Island.
I would have hoped that the basic operation of American democracy, and in particular the basic integrity of America's elections, would not be a topic that we would have to come to the Senate floor to worry about. But the character down the road in the Oval Office is making all sorts of threats to the cornerstone of America's democracy, our elections. I'll mention three. First, he nonstop lies about rigged elections. He can't bear to face the fact that Joe Biden beat him by millions of votes fair and square, and so he invented a story of rigged elections. Well, as has repeatedly been shown, if any election has been rigged recently, it was Donald Trump's first election, where study after study, report after report, showed that Russia had been messing around in that election, using covert influence operations to influence American voters and steer them towards their favorite, Donald Trump. But the lying about rigged elections is a bit of a warning sign, because the other thing we've learned about Trump is that his accusations tend to be actual confessions. The bad stuff that he intends to do, he announces by accusing others of doing the same thing. So when people notice the mischief that he's up to, he says, well, everybody does it. That doesn't make it anything other than a lie. Then, he has been out bullying Republican states to try to get him more seats in Congress by doing mid-season gerrymandering of their states. This succeeded, kind of, in Texas. When I say it succeeded kind of, it succeeded in the sense that they got the gerrymandered districts. But here's the rub. When you gerrymander more Republican districts into a state, you make the freeboard, the win ratio for each of those districts, a little bit less. And if yesterday was any message, Republicans need to worry about a wave election washing away Trump's poison and nonsense. In a wave election, those gerrymandered districts that you thought you'd moved into the Republican column could get sunk in the wave. In particular, we've already seen from yesterday's results, more analysis will follow, but that it looks like Latino voters, important in Texas, are abandoning Trump. So it may be that Texas's gerrymandering blows up in its face. And wouldn't that be a nice turnabout? Maybe that's what Republicans in Indiana were thinking when they refused to gerrymander their state. They might well be looking at Texas and saying, you know, voters in Texas might actually have cared more about electric bills, about their homeowners insurance crisis, about their cost of living, and wanted Texan legislators to do something about that instead of going off on a partisan gallivant to redistrict the state. And those voters might just hold those Republicans accountable for choosing as their priority to use gerrymandering so that politicians can choose their voters instead of paying attention to the voters who want help with costs, who want their homeowners insurance problem solved, who are concerned about their electric utility bills, and who are sick to death of what's happening with grocery costs. The third avenue of attack on elections by Trump is that he is modeling government election interference in front of our faces right now. When you send the National Guard into American cities, when you deploy masked, plainclothes, presumably ICE agents, to yank people off the street and fling them in unmarked vans and disappear them, you are getting people used to images that Americans are not used to. You are inoculating Americans against that kind of abuse of both military and law enforcement capabilities. So that when it's election day, and that kind of nonsense takes place around polling places to discourage voters, we've gotten used to it. So the lying, the constant lying about rigged elections, the bullying, the constant bullying to force state legislatures to gerrymander, even though that's not what their voters want, and the constant modeling of government interference in elections All of that is a signal that we have to be on our guard to protect our democracy. It's not just Trump. In doing this, Trump has allies. He has allies on the packed and captured Supreme Court, a court that Republicans packed and captured specifically to help their big, creepy billionaire donors acquire more power in American democracy. And boy, have we seen enough creepy billionaire power in American democracy. Dark money, the secret, sneaky, dark money floods that are poisoning our elections, that allow billionaires to channel multi-million-dollar contributions into races, hiding behind front groups and screens and super PACs, so that voters can't do their duties as citizens of figuring out who is telling them what. Because the loudest and noisiest and most prolific messages are coming from behind masked entities. It was one of the dirtiest deeds ever done to our democracy, and it was done by the Roberts Court. Voter suppression, making sure that white legislatures could discourage Black and Latino voters by changing the rules for who you can, when you can vote and how you can vote. We passed a Voting Rights Act in the Congress to stop that kind of behavior. And this Supreme Court, the Roberts Court, has been diligently pulling out piece by piece of those Voting Rights Act protections. And when they do, what happens? Instantly, those Southern legislatures go to work to make it harder and harder for minorities to vote. Hundreds of bills get filed. Third, when they were confronted with partisan gerrymandering, distorting Americans' right to vote by letting politicians pick voters instead of voters pick politicians, they said, oh, well, that's all fine. We're not going to look into any of that. Courts are not allowed to look into whether gerrymandering is legal or illegal, constitutional or unconstitutional. Those three decisions, flooding our elections with corrupting dark money, letting state legislatures make it harder for certain people to vote who they don't want voting, and gerrymandering districts against the will of the public. People hate gerrymandering. Those three things have collectively done immense damage to our democracy, and those bad decisions are going to play out in this coming election. I'll close with a point about all three of those cases.
Hey, Gianna.
The Citizens United case that let filthy, unlimited dark money pollute our elections. The Shelby case that tore down an essential element of the Voting Rights Act. And the Rucho case that allowed uncontrolled partisan gerrymandering. All three of them share a very important characteristic in common, and that is they hang on a false fact. To get where the court wanted to go, those Republican appointees had to make up a false fact that the decision hung on. In Citizens United, it was that all the unlimited money would be transparent. Well, we know that was false. Every $1 billion in dark money that falls into our elections proves that was false. In Shelby, it was that things had changed. You didn't need to worry about Southern legislatures trying to keep Democratic voters from showing up. But you saw that that was false because all those laws were immediately passed to suppress voters. And in the Rucho case, it was courts can't figure out gerrymandering stuff. It's just too complicated. But in fact, courts were figuring it out. It's not even that hard to figure out. The court just made up falsely that this was too hard. When a court is making up false facts to get to an outcome that it wants, That's not a sign of great integrity in those proceedings. So we have a lot to worry about, and we have more to worry about after yesterday, because last night showed that voters do not like what Trump and his Republican cohort here in the House and the Senate are doing to our country. This was a small wave, and with any luck, it is building to a bigger wave. And instead of adjusting to popular opinion, what we know they're going to do is to try to use even more tools to corrupt democracy, corrupt elections, and defeat our ability to have the American people decide who they want to lead them at the polls. That is the predicament we are in, and it requires us to be on high alert. I yield the floor.
The Democratic Whip.
Mr. President, I want to thank my friends, Senators Padilla and Blumenthal, for putting together this floor block. Yesterday was Election Day for many Americans. They stood at the ballot box and voted their conscience. But they weren't just voting for a candidate, they were voting for a vision of our nation. Will we continue to be that nation that stands for those powerful words carved over the entrance to the Supreme Court, equal justice under law? Or will we allow MAGA politics and President Trump's assault on the rule of law to damage the democratic process that we hold so dear? Well, the American people certainly answered that question yesterday with resounding votes rejecting the Trump administration's disastrous policies. We know the right to vote is under attack from those who seek to undermine, in some cases deny, the very will of the American people, the heart of our democracy. There has been an effort for years to restrict access to the ballot under the false banner of, quote, election integrity, close quote. Under the Trump administration, this effort's being led by the very government entities that were created to protect the right to vote. This betrayal is deliberate. It is eroding the foundation of our democracy. Let me be clear. There is no longer a functioning federal entity actively safeguarding each American's right to vote, our most fundamental constitutional freedom. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, once the defender of voting access for communities of color, those serving in the military, rural voters, people with disability, has been devastated by President Trump. Let me tell you a little anecdote. Last night I was in the grocery store in Capitol Hill buying a few things to eat. A woman came up to me and said she knew who I was, and she wanted to let me know what her situation was. She works in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and she's furloughed at the present time. She said, do you know how many people are left in this Civil Rights Division, which once had almost 200 employees? 63. It's been devastated by Trump. Under the Trump administration's reimagined mission, aligned with MAGA politics and driven by the lie of widespread voter fraud, the Civil Rights Division voting section has abdicated its role in confronting the real and rising tide of disenfranchisement. Attorney General Pam Bondi removed the voting section's leadership team and ordered the dismissal of the section's active cause cases. The voting section is responsible for enforcing federal laws that were enacted to protect the right to vote, including the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, the National Voter Registration Act, and the Help America Vote Act. The decision to gut this section by Attorney General Bondi and the White House will harm American voters and cause long-lasting damage. It is part of the Trump legacy. The Trump administration also ordered the Justice Department to monitor polling sites in California and New Jersey before yesterday's election at the request of Republican Party officials. While election monitoring is a crucial tool, deploying monitors on a partisan basis is outrageous. We know that voter fraud is extremely rare, extremely, but President Trump and Republicans continue to baselessly claim it is rampant, trying to suppress the vote. We must fight these dangerous attempts to restrict the right to vote and restore confidence in our democracy by ensuring that every eligible American has access to the ballot. That's why, in honor of my late friend and voting rights pioneer, Congressman John Lewis, I've been proud to introduce a bill that bears his name, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act Advancement Act, which would restore and strengthen the Voting Rights Act. It's been an honor to work with Senator Warnock of Georgia and Senator Leahy before him to lead this legislation as a former chair and now ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. I remain committed to seeing this bill signed into law. This legislation should be a no-brainer. The issue of access to the ballot used to enjoy overwhelming bipartisan support. Now it's been gamed and politicized by the MAGA bunch. But since the conservative majority in a divided 5-4 Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Shelby County decision, this has become an increasingly partisan issue. Attacks on voting rights aren't happening in a vacuum. Across this country, Republican lawmakers and litigators are using every trick in the book to change the rules of the game in their favor and cling to power. Purging voter rolls, closing polling places, making it more difficult by restricting mail-in voting, undermining the Voting Rights Act, all for one purpose, to limit access to the ballot box. The Republicans actually believe we're a better nation if fewer people vote. I believe every eligible person should vote if you want a true democracy working. President Trump is hell-bent on continuing to undermine faith in our elections and attack the rule of law, whether by inciting a violent mob on January 6, which overran the Senate chamber to overturn the results of a free and fair election, or by demanding that blue states turn over reams of voter data to his administration. President Trump has led a long, coordinated campaign to suppress the vote in America. We now face a critical question. Will we sit idly by while Trump and MAGA Republicans steamroll the great American experiment, or will we cause some good and necessary trouble, as John Lewis once said, to save our democracy and our precious, almost sacred right to vote? If yesterday's election are any indication of how the American people feel about this administration, I'd say they're in for more, and you better get ready for more good trouble. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, I appreciate the chance to rise today to talk about a success story in Virginia in the elections last night, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack than my colleagues, and I'm not going to talk about my pride in my friends who won elections. I'm instead going to talk about the turnout in the elections. Virginia has governor's races every 4 years, and we do them in an odd year cycle where the governor's race is the year following the presidential race. And this has been our practice for a very long time. And we can look at the turnout as the state has grown in population. We can look at the total turnout in a governor's race and get some sense for what is happening and how engaged our electorate is. Virginia has had a history in the past of significant obstacles to voting. My father-in-law fought in the submarine corps in the Pacific during World War II. And he came back to the state in the first governor's race after he got back from World War II was in the late 1940s. And he noticed that the total turnout in that race represented almost single digits in terms of the eligible voter population. Virtually nobody voted. And my father-in-law, Lynn, who later became governor of Virginia, said, wait, I was in the Pacific fighting for democracy, and I come home to my home state, and virtually no one is even voting for governor? That led him to start a career in politics that eventually achieved him the distinction of being the first Republican ever popularly elected to be governor of Virginia in 1969. What was happening in Virginia in those days was poll taxes and literacy tests and other things that restricted people's ability to vote. And we've had a remarkable transformation under both Democratic and Republican leaders that has expanded the franchise and expanded participation. And what I want to stress very clearly is voting turnout, voting participation, making it easier to participate is not a partisan thing. It helps Republicans and it helps Democrats. And you can tell that by looking at the history of Virginia gubernatorial elections and seeing what happens when turnout goes up. Sometimes it's great for Democrats, sometimes it's great for Republicans. I'll give you an example, Mr. President. 4 years ago, in 2021, we had a race in Virginia, and Republicans swept all 3 statewide offices. Republicans elected Glenn Youngkin to be our governor, and he has now served the single 4-year term that Virginia grants to governors. We're the only state where you can't run for re-election. Virginia elected our first woman lieutenant governor, Republican Winsome Earl Sears, and she was also the first woman of color to hold a statewide office. And Virginia elected 4 years ago Jason Miyares. Mr. President, you and I were chatting about him earlier today, who is a Cuban American, to be our Attorney General. Okay, why do I bring up that election from 4 years ago? I bring it up because it was notable in that the Republicans swept, but it was notable for another reason. The turnout in that race in 2021 was 25% higher than the turnout 4 years previously. It was the second largest jump in turnout between any governor's races in Virginia. And Mr. President, I'll say with a matter of pride, the first biggest jump was between my father-in-law's 2 governor's races in 1965 and 1969. He ran for governor as a Republican in 1965 and lost. He ran for governor as a Republican in 1969 and won, and the turnout jumped by 68%. Why? Because the Supreme Court struck down poll taxes. And the Voting Rights Act struck down poll taxes in federal elections. And when poll taxes went away, a huge surge of additional participation. So when Governor Youngkin and Winsome Earl Sears won and Jason Miyares won in 2021, why were they able to get a 25% increase in voting participation in Virginia? They did it because Virginia made reforms to guarantee and expand the right to vote. We embraced mail-in voting. We embraced no excuse absentee voting. We allowed people to vote for 45 days before the election day. And by doing those 3 things, some of which President Trump says should be banned at the national level, it helped a Republican ticket sweep all races in Virginia. We went, by most estimates, from being one of the states that made it harder to vote. We traditionally were ranked in the 51 states plus DC. We were usually ranked about 45th in the ease of access to the ballot. We went from the bottom to the top 10, and it was good for a Republican ticket. Governor Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor Sears, Attorney General Miyares won a big election with increased turnout. Expanding access to the ballot is not a partisan thing. Last night, Democrats had a sweep. My friend Abigail Spanberger, who served in the House with a number of my Senate colleagues, was elected to be Virginia's first woman governor. My friend Ghazala Hashmi, a state senator, actually my state senator, she's the one I write cranky letters to when I have to write a cranky letter to an official. She was elected to be Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, and get this is pretty amazing. She is the first Muslim American woman ever elected to a statewide office anywhere in the United States. And my friend Jay Jones, who I've known since he was 11 years old, was elected to be Virginia's first African American Attorney General. They also saw a big increase in turnout. The turnout that we had last night was about 10% higher than the turnout that we saw in 2021. So the point that I just wanted to make by standing here is my colleagues have talked about the variety of threats there may be to ballot access, whether it's forced redistrictings or whether it's President Trump saying, you know, we should abandon vote by mail or make it harder for people to vote. The history of my state shows if you make it convenient for people to vote, number one, more people will vote. And number two, that can be good for Republicans or Democrats, depending upon the political dynamic of the time and the strength of the candidates in their campaigns. It used to be that voting and voting rights in this chamber was pretty bipartisan. When the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965 nationally, it wouldn't have passed without Republican votes. Yes, it was a Democratic president, LBJ, who put it on the table, but it was Republican senators disproportionately who carried the torch to victory on the voting rights bill in 1965, as many Southern Democrats opposed that bill. As the voting rights bill has been reauthorized over time, it was always reauthorized significantly with both Democratic and Republican votes. It's only been in the aftermath of the Shelby decision, which happened right as I came into the Senate, that voting rights has started to seem like a partisan issue, where Democrats have tried to restore some of the voting rights provisions, for example, the pre-clearance provisions in Section 5, but have struggled to find any Republican willing to do it. So the point that I want to make is, as I conclude, is just that I'm happy in Virginia because my friends won last night. But I'm happy anytime we have elections where people really participate. And where I get really depressed about elections is when turnout is low. Last night we had big participation, that benefited Democrats. 4 years ago we had big participation, that benefited Republicans. The kinds of things we've done in Virginia to make elections more accessible to all are common sense and convenient rules that I embrace at the national level and that are good for democracy, sometimes benefiting one party, sometimes benefiting another, but ultimately good for democracy and good for voters. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
which includes Democrats as well. So the president's made it very clear, if senators want to understand the administration's operations against narco drug traffickers, we are very happy to speak with them about that, and we will continue to do so. But we've been incredibly transparent. As I said, there's been 8 briefings on this topic, with the 9th coming tomorrow. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. There's been some reporting out there about the possibility of furloughed workers not getting back pay. We know that the president signed that bill into law in his first term. Does the administration guarantee that all furloughed workers will get back pay?
This is something we are very much open to discussing with Democrats as part of the discussions about the continuing resolution to keep the government open. And it's something that Republicans are talking with Democrats about right now. I won't get ahead of those negotiations or discussions.
That's a possibility that may not happen, even though it's law.
I just said Republicans in the White House are very much open to discussing this with Democrats.
And just one last question. As this government shutdown now drags on, about to make history as the longest government shutdown in American history, can you talk about what the president is personally doing to try to see an end to this?
He's pushing Republicans to keep voting and to keep opening up the Senate floor to vote for the clean continuing resolution. He had the Senate Majority Leader and the House Caucus Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, here at the White House to talk about this in the very early stages, to give them a chance to come to their senses and avoid this entire government shutdown at the very beginning. And they chose not to. And I think it's been very clear to everyone in this room and to everyone across the country that the Democrats are playing partisan politics with our United States federal government. And all Republicans have wanted to do for the last 35 days is reopen the government. That has been the president's position since day one. It is his position today on day 35. And all we need are 5 common sense Democrats with have a little bit of courage and come to the table and vote with Republicans. I saw Senator John Fetterman on television last night saying that he hopes more folks in his party will step up. And we certainly agree with him on that point. Sure.
Caroline, the president posted on True Social that the voting underway in California is, quote, rigged. What evidence does he have of that, and what does it mean that mail-in ballots in that state are under legal and criminal review? By whom and why? And also, in this vein, does the White House still plan to issue an executive order banning mail-in voting, and what legal authority do you have to do that?
The White House is working on an executive order to strengthen our elections in this country and to ensure that there cannot be blatant fraud, as we've seen in California with their universal mail-in voting system. It's absolutely true that there's fraud in California's elections. It's just a fact. It is just a fact. They have a universal mail-in voting system, which we know is ripe for fraud. Names of other people and the names of illegal aliens who shouldn't be voting in American elections. There's countless examples, and we'd be happy to provide them. As for executive action the White House is taking, yes, we are looking into that. And like any executive order, of course, any executive order the president signs is within his full executive authority and within the confines of the law. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. I've got 2 questions I'd like to ask you about New York, but first I'd like to ask you about breaking news from the Attorney General. She revealed just about an hour ago that the Biden Justice Department seized President Trump's official first-term phone and subpoenaed his private phone records. Do you have a reaction to that? And also, do we know if they actually got those private call records?
I saw the Attorney General's post on that. For additional questions, I would refer you to the Department of Justice, but I think this is just further evidence of the egregious overreach and weaponization of government that took place under the previous White House against then former President and now President Donald J. Trump. It was a clear effort by the Biden White House and the Biden DOJ to go after the president, and this is just further evidence of that.
On New York, we've seen the president's messages that he's put out, but could you describe how he's feeling as a New Yorker watching this election?
Well, the president is a New Yorker and he loves New York. It is his home. He talks about that all of the time, and he's made his thoughts on this election quite clear, I think, himself. In the back, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Over the weekend, there were reports.
I was going to you in the green, but go ahead and then you can have your question.
Thank you. Over the weekend, there were reports that President Trump was due to host President of Syria, Ahmed al-Sharia, on Monday. Do you have any preview for that meeting? Is he expected to invite him to join the U.S.-led anti-ISIS coalition?
I can confirm that that meeting will be taking place here at the White House on Monday, and this is part of the president's efforts in diplomacy to meet with anyone around the world in the pursuit of peace. And as you know, when the president was in the Middle East, he made the historic decision to lift sanctions on Syria to give them a real chance at peace. And I think the administration, we've seen good progress on that front under their new leadership. And so he will be here at the White House on Monday, and I'll let the president speak further on it on Monday. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. I was just curious, you had mentioned there that President Trump, as we know, has been speaking with Republican leaders in Congress about reopening the government. Is he involved in any other negotiations? And is he prepared to sign something if a deal does come out by the end of this week? On top of that, with SNAP benefits, does he have any authorities or considering any authority there to release more funds to help people who are desperately needing these benefits?
So look, I think I've already answered the question on SNAP. We're complying with the court's order, and we're getting that partial payment out the door as much as we can and as quickly as we can, but it's going to take some time because, again, this is a prorated payment that we're tapping into a contingency fund for. The best way to get those payments out the door is for Democrats to reopen the government. But yes, the president is in constant communication with his friends on Capitol Hill. They know, they call, he answers, he picks up the phone. He's a very transparent president in that way. And as soon as the Democrats pass the clean continuing resolution, President Trump will be here to sign it. Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. President Trump has threatened to go into Nigeria guns ablazing if Nigeria's government does not stop the killing of Christians in that country. Has the White House heard back from Nigeria's government on this threat?
As the president stated, Michael, if the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the United States will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may take action to wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities, especially against innocent women and children. I don't have any further announcements on that for you today, but I can assure you the President of the United States is watching this situation unfold very closely, as is our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Caroline, President Trump has endorsed Andrew Cuomo in New York City's mayoral race. He has not by name endorsed Winsome Sears in Virginia's gubernatorial race. Why is that?
Look, as you know from this podium, I'm quite limited in what I can say with regards to ongoing political elections. I think the president has spoken for himself and what he wants to see take place in these elections today. I think he feels very positive and strongly about it. As you know, he recently, a few weeks back, spoke to Prime Minister directly when he celebrated in the Oval Office Diwali with many high-ranking Indian American officials here at the White House. We have a great U.S. ambassador to India in Mr. Sergio Gore, who will represent our country very well. And the president and his trade team continue to be in very serious discussions with India with respect to that topic. So I know the president has great respect for Prime Minister Modi, and they speak pretty frequently. Thank you.
Hi, yes. On the air traffic controller crisis ongoing, Secretary Duffy said he will now start to cancel on ground flights next week to maintain safety. Should people fly next week given this new information, and is the administration encouraging people to stop flying altogether and look at alternative transportation modes?
The administration is encouraging Democrats to reopen the federal government so this chaos and disruption to our air traffic control system in the United States of America stops. It is ridiculous that we have even gotten to this place and that the Democrats have continued to shut down the government. With 35 days, our air traffic controllers continuing to work unpaid, every single major airline in our country coming out and begging the Democrats to please reopen the government. And you had a Democrat staffer who was quoted, I believe in Politico a few weeks back, saying, short of planes falling out of the sky, we are not going to reopen the government. That is a reckless and dangerous statement from someone who didn't want to put their name on that statement, but we know it came from the Democrat Party. And I think we're very clear. We want to reopen the government so we can resume travel in the safest and most efficient way possible, especially as we head into the busiest travel season of the month. We have Thanksgiving in a few weeks. And so Americans across the country need to make it very clear to their Democrat representatives that we want this government to be reopened so we can resume safe and efficient travel. Fran.
Caroline, as of last I checked, the president still had not commented on the death of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Is the White House involved in funeral arrangements in any way? Does the president plan to speak at the funeral? Has he spoken to anyone in the Cheney family today? And does the White House have an opinion on whether or not the former vice president should lie in honor or stay in the Capitol?
I don't believe the White House is involved in that planning, or at least hasn't gotten to it yet. I know the president is aware of the former vice president's passing, and as you saw, flags have been lowered to half staff in accordance with statutory law. Jasmine.
Thank you. Back on the question of the filibuster, how much political capital is President Trump willing to expend to get Republicans to do what he's asking? I mean, will we see him at the Hill? Will he be calling folks over here? What exactly is President Trump planning to do outside of these true socials and maybe some of these private conversations to get Republicans to fall in line?
Look, I think you'll see. I think you'll see the president continue to engage very strongly and consistently with his friends on Capitol Hill. I don't have any meetings to read out for you at this time, but I think you should stay tuned and keep your eyes on Truth Social on this matter. The president's making his position on it quite clear. And again, he is right. Republicans need to play tough. We know that this is what the Democrats will do if they are ever given the keys to power again. And he wants to pass as many good pieces of legislation as we possibly can for our country and for our people. That includes election integrity reforms. It includes additional tax policy. It includes, fixing our immigration that only Congress can. And the president fears with a Democrat Party that is so radical and opposes everything he does and everything he says, this is the only option for Republicans to move forward. Karen.
In a second question, President Trump said to CBS in the 60 Minutes interview that he did not know the Binance founder, which he pardoned. What exactly did he mean for that? I know it caused
He means he does not know him personally. He means he does not have a personal relationship with this individual. And when it comes to pardons, the White House takes them with the utmost seriousness, and the president understands the responsibility that he has as president to issue clemency and issue pardons to individuals who are seeking that. That's why we have a very thorough review process here that moves with the Department of Justice and the White House counsel's office. There's a whole team of qualified lawyers who look at every single pardon request that ultimately make their way up to the President of the United States. He's the ultimate final decision maker. And he was very clear when he came into office that he was most interested in looking at pardoning individuals who were abused and used by the Biden Department of Justice and were over-prosecuted by a weaponized DOJ. And the individual you're referring to, that was certainly the case. Even the judge in his case said that the sentencing that the Biden administration was asking for was egregious and went too far. And so the president is correcting that wrong, and he has officially ended the Biden administration's war on the cryptocurrency industry, and I think that's the message he sent with this pardon. Karen, yes.
Back on the issue of back pay for furloughed workers, you said that the White House is open to discussing that with Democrats, but what would that discussion even be? There was a law, the president signed it in 2019. What could a discussion look like? Why is that even open for discussion?
Look, Karen, as I said, Republicans are talking about that with Democrats right now, and I don't want to get in the middle of those sensitive conversations. But as we've complied with the SNAP order, the White House, the administration is always going to comply with the laws. We're always going to comply with the ruling of judges across the country. But the Republicans are discussing this matter with Democrats right now.
Why would there even be a consideration of not paying those workers?
Tom Dempsey, News Nation. Big day in the Supreme Court tomorrow with President Trump's tariff policy facing a legal challenge. What's at stake with that case? And if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration, what is Plan B for trade policy?
I'll tell you, the White House is always preparing for Plan B. It would be imprudent of the president's advisors not to prepare for such a situation. With that said, we are 100% confident in the president and his team's legal argument in the merits of the law in this case. And we remain optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing. The importance of this case cannot be overstated. The president must have the emergency authority to utilize tariffs. Look at what President Trump has been able to do with the leverage and the power of tariffs. He's been able to sign peace deals all over the world and end global conflicts and literally save lives. He's been able to bring in trillions of dollars of investments into our country. In fact, this year alone, we are going to cut the deficit by $600 billion, namely because of the president's effective use of tariffs. And the president strongly believes that economic security is a matter of national security, and tariffs have a lot to do with that. And this case is not just about President Trump. It's about the use of this emergency authorization for tariffs for future presidents and administrations to come, and we're confident and hopeful that the Supreme Court will do the right thing. Kristen.
Why did President Trump get an MRI during his recent visit to Wall Street?
Look, as President Trump said, he would inquire with the physicians. I'll check back on that. But as the physical itself stated, Kristen, and as you all know, because you are all witness to it, every single day the president is in optimal physical health. This was a follow-up appointment, and we provided a detailed readout of that physical. I'm happy to give it to you again, and I can inquire further.
With all due respect, an MRI is a very specific procedure. It's done on a part of the body looking for something specific, so it's not generally part of any kind of routine checkup. And in addition, President Trump has said that he wants to be transparent. He told us to ask the doctors, which we have and have not heard back. Why don't we have more information on this?
As I said, I'll check back for you. Go ahead.
Karen, can you update us on the mediation efforts this administration is leading in Sudan, trying to achieve a ceasefire there?
Sure, yes. The United States is actively engaged in efforts to bring about a peaceful resolution to the terrible conflict in Sudan. We remain committed to working with our international partners, including Quad members, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, as well as others, to lead a negotiated peace process that addresses both the immediate humanitarian crisis and the longer-term political challenges. I actually spoke with Secretary Rubio about this morning, as of course there's been, kind of an uptick in recent reporting on the matter, and he assured me that the administration is very much engaged. We're in pretty frequent communication with those Arab partners that I just mentioned, and we want to see this conflict come to a peaceful end, just as we have with so many others, but the reality is it's a very complicated situation on the ground right now. Yes.
Hi, yes. Just trying to go back into the subject of Mexico. Is the Trump administration planning to send U.S. troops to Mexico to combat drug cartels, as reported by other outlets?
That's not something I would confirm from this podium if it were happening, so I will not comment on that. Eamon.
Thank you, Caroline. Why did the president decide not to go to the Supreme Court tomorrow? He'd indicated earlier that he might want to go and attend in person.
Yeah.
Now he's saying he's not going to go. Why?
The president did have an interest in attending the Supreme Court hearing tomorrow, as I just expressed how important it is to him, the administration, and the country, this case. But he is traveling to Miami tomorrow, as you all know, to give an economic address with the mayor of Miami and many global business leaders to talk about his historic success with the economy over the past 10 months and talk about sort of where we are headed as a country in terms of our economy. So he'll be traveling tomorrow on the road in Miami. That's why he won't be here, but Secretary Scott Bessent will be in attendance at the hearing tomorrow at the request of the president.
He has said that he doesn't want to export the high-end NVIDIA chips to China, but the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that there was some question about whether the president would raise this as a possible concession with the Chinese side during his meeting with Xi Jinping. So does the White House consider NVIDIA chip exports to China to be a closed issue right now, or is this an ongoing negotiation between the United States, China, and NVIDIA at this point?
The president has made his position on this very clear, both to the Chinese and also to all of you. He's answered this question directly. As for the most advanced chips, the Blackwell chip, that's not something we're interested in selling to China at this time. Annie?
Does the president think that the results of the Virginia or New Jersey gubernatorial races tomorrow or statewide races tomorrow will in any way reflect a voter sentiment towards his administration?
Look, Annie, I'm not at liberty to talk about the election results, and I certainly won't get ahead of them. I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals that may or may not happen tonight. We'll have to watch and see. And I'm sure you'll hear directly from the president tomorrow on that point.
Quickly on Snap, just really quickly, is there anything that prompted the president's tweet this morning? Because it did seem quite different from some of his other communications about Snap. It seemed a little bit out of the left field. I'm just wondering if he had a conversation or if there's anything you're aware of that caused him to decide to, at around 11 o'clock, to send out that message.
Look, the president is constantly well read on the news, as you know, and he is very much aware we are in day 35 of a government shutdown in which these SNAP benefits, were pushing them out the door. USDA put out that guidance to the states this morning. The president was aware of that, and he wants to make it very clear that these benefits are in jeopardy because of the Democrats, and they should just open the government so that we can continue getting these funds out the door in an easier and more efficient way.
There's some new reporting that just dropped a few minutes ago that the Trump administration is negotiating with the
makers of Ozempic to sell some weight loss drugs for $149 a month. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Do you have any more information on that? Can you confirm that?
I think the president has said himself in previous Most Favored Nations announcements that this is something that the administration has been engaged in and looking into. I won't get ahead of the president on any future announcements, but I will echo his strong commitment to bringing down drug prices in this country. And you've heard it directly from Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Marty McCary and his entire Health and Human Services team, how committed the president is to bringing down the cost of drugs, and we're working with pharmaceutical companies to do that every day.
Very quickly, Caroline, on SNAP. I know it's been asked, and I know Reach asked it, but I want to put a fine point on it. You talked about the president's post here, and he wrote that SNAP benefits will only be given to radical left Democrats open up the government. I understand your previous answers, but as written, how would that not violate the court order as it's written?
I've now answered this question several times, Gabe. We are complying with the court's order. We are getting the payments out the door as quickly as we can. USDA sent the guidance to the state. The president is referring to future SNAP payments. He does not want to have to keep tapping in to an emergency fund and depleting it. In the case of a catastrophe in this country, he wants to have those funds preserved, as they should be. And he's made it very clear Democrats should reopen the government. I have one final positive note for all of you. I told you I would keep you posted when the White House would resume public tours. Well, I'm pleased to announce the Office of the First Lady has reopened the doors for public tours on Tuesday, December 2nd. There will be an updated route, of course, for guests in light of the ballroom construction that's taking place, but we very much look forward to celebrating the holiday season. And the public and members of Congress and anyone who wants to come visit the First Lady's beautiful decorations is welcome to go to whitehouse.gov/visit to sign up for a tour. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Shutdown in American history tonight. The Democrats are intentionally hurting American families, workers, and businesses with this shutdown to fight for free health care for illegal aliens and to appease their radical.
She's still talking about that illegal health care, and everybody who is worth 2 grains of salt understand that they're not trying to give health care to illegal aliens. Anybody that has done any research knows that's not what they're doing. But she continues on with that lie, and only goofy people believe it, so it is what it is. I can't help it that I can't help it you all believe it, but you believe it. So go ahead and believe it. Most of America didn't believe this goofiness. Okay? Most of America who voted didn't believe this goofiness. Okay? Right. That's the problem. They don't get it. No money over. Yeah, that's correct, Lizzie. No money overseas. None of the goofy talk. None of the trans talk. Because you Republicans, you don't stand on anything. That's the problem that I have with you. You don't stand on anything. You have nothing but failed policies. And the first thing you all do when you come into somebody's chat is start saying gays, trans, Biden, brown people, immigrants. We hate gays, trans, brown people, immigrants. We hate. That's all you all have to do is stand on. That's what the American people saw last night. That y'all have a bunch of hate. That's all you have. That's all you stand on. That's what America voted against. You keep talking about that goofy shit, and you're going to lose even worse. Every time you come in, every time we have a discussion, the first thing the MAGA starts to talk about is trans, gays, immigrants, and everything else. I asked you all, what do you stand for? Can't not one of y'all give me something that you stand for. Okay? I stand for the poor, the veterans, the handicapped, the elderly. I want to fight for them people. Anybody that tells me they're going to fight for those people, then I'm on their team. What do you all stand for? You MAGAs don't stand for anything. That's what the election told you last night. That you guys don't stand for anything. Okay? and most of us Democrats stand for what I think we should stand for. No, that's not what we're talking about, Rainy Girl. We said, what do you stand for? I stand for America too. So what, Rainy Girl? What else do you stand for? You stand by the handicapped people? You stand by the elderly people? Do you stand by the disability people? Who do you stand? What do you stand for? Y'all don't stand for nothing. We all stand for America, but then you don't stand for nothing. And that's the weird part, Draven. That's the weirdest part of all. They love those policies. That's just on your part. You're the one that's dumb because most people love those policies. There's no failed, and you know why there's a problem with ACA, Draven, low key. Do you know why there's a problem with the failure of Obamacare or Obamacare having a problem? It's because your lowly Republicans took the mandate away. They took the mandate away. That's how the prices went out of style, went skyrocketed. That's how the prices for ACA skyrocketed. Your Republicans took the individual mandate away from ACA. And once you do that, that means the insurance companies can charge people whatever they want to. That's why ACA didn't work. Please get your facts straight. The plan and the medical plan was fine till you Republicans decided you were going to take away the individual mandate and try to tinker around the edges and get rid of it until John McCain told y'all to go fuck off. Wow. I swear every day I got to fight with y'all because y'all don't know how to do research. Y'all don't never learn to do research. You're unknown, you're gay, or you're weird, or you're a zombie. No, it's a zombie. Nah, I thought it was something else. It's a zombie. Sure we do. We stand for the illegal immigrants. Sure we do, Rainy Girl. We sure do. We sure do. And they told you last night that they were going to stand with the immigrants last night when you guys or you Republicans lost everything. Do you know how difficult it is to lose everything? Lose every race? I ain't found one that they won. That means the country rejected your philosophy overwhelmingly. That means how does it feel to have your policies rejected overwhelmingly? The individual mandate is what fucked up the ACA, which fucked up the Obamacare, taking that away. And the Republicans took that away because the Republicans don't want nobody to have health care. They want you to go die sick. They want you to pay for your own Medicare. I didn't assume you were a Republican. I didn't say anything about what you were, Draven. I said the Republicans. You're Republicans. You're in here talking 2-point crazy about some goddamn medical insurance. Okay? User, you're a zombie. That's the problem. You don't know half of what you're talking about. You're just in the chat. Hey, Democrats, if there are any Democrats in the chat, look at what we have for people who keep supporting this particular platform. Look at what they're doing. Instead of bringing facts, they're looking at me telling me I'm lying. They don't have any facts. They just have feelings. Didn't somebody say that the Democrats are the emotional ones? I don't see Democrats getting emotional at all. I see Republican people in the chat crashing out because their Republican leaders betrayed them and they can't stand it. There's no time will tell. Soon as people hear about programs that help them, They love the programs that help them. It's only a small portion of you diehard idiots. No, not idiots. I'm sorry, zombies. Only zombies. You notice they come in. You notice Democrats. They come in the chat and they don't have no proof. The reason why ACA is in the shape that it's in is because the Republicans removed a whole bunch of things out of it and then made it. They tried to destroy it, so they weakened it. The Republicans took away the ACA, the mandate, the individual mandate in the ACA, which is what tried to destroy the Obamacare. Okay. What do you mean, where's the proof? I don't need proof. Go look it up. What do you mean? I just gave you exactly what was wrong with the ACA. The individual mandate is gone. Look it up. That's why the prices are as high as they are, Abby, because there is no individual mandate that the Republicans took out of it. They tinkered around the edges, and that's what happened. Chris Bitt, I don't see nobody talking about any kind of hate or violence. It's all on your side. It's all on your side. I'm sorry. Y'all, you just have to accept what your side does. Your president is the one who talks 2-point crazy. Your president is the one who talks Marxist, Antifa, terrorist. Your president says these things. Your president. The Orange Thug, the Donald J. Trump, whatever, he's the one who talks about those things. Okay? We Democrats don't talk about those things. We don't care about, we don't sit there and we don't get on camera and call Republicans thugs. We don't get on camera and call Republicans terrorists or Marxists or Antifas or Muslims or communist. We don't get on TV and say that stuff. That's the Republican Party that gets on the TV and says those things. Okay? Maybe you need to check your party before you come over here talking to me. Republicans is the one who got rid of the individual mandate from the ACA. The Republicans did that. They tinkered around the edges and they got rid of the individual mandate. And once they got rid of the individual mandate, the pricing and the premiums went sky high with the ACA. Jesus. People always got to do research. I'm not doing research for you. I'm not doing that. You do research. I don't recall anybody saying anything about. See all that projection. Are y'all wild? I don't know. Well, maybe you're talking to somebody in the chat. You haven't heard me say anything about Nazis or anything else. Although your president is a fascist, that's as good as we're gonna get. Preach some bipartisan. I have been preaching bipartisan, but we have to have the same grasp of reality on the facts. And you zombies refuse to grasp the reality. So if you don't want to grasp the reality, what you want me to do? The reality is this president don't give a damn about you poor people. And y'all going to bat for a president give a damn about you.
Can he go there?
I
I need a Zen moment.
Mr. President?
Senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, are we in a quorum call?
We are.
I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to thank Ranking Member Padilla and Senator Blumenthal, Ranking Member Padilla of the Rules Committee, Senator
Sorry.
On this issue. We are focused on, as we saw last night, Americans turn out in droves to vote, to exercise their constitutional right and really their duty to vote. And we want to make sure that people can continue to stand up, to show up, whether they are Democrats, Republicans, or independents, to protect voting rights and ensure that every eligible American can make their voice heard in our democracy. I also want to thank the state and local election administrators, secretaries of state, poll workers, and everyone else in states like Minnesota, Virginia, California, New Jersey, and more who made sure that yesterday's elections went smoothly. It takes a lot of people and a lot of planning to do that. Yesterday, millions of people exercised that sacred right. According to preliminary data, Minneapolis saw its second highest turnout for a municipal election, with more than 147,000 people casting a ballot in its off year. And in Virginia, 3.3 million people voted this year, the state's highest ever turnout in a non-presidential election year. As Congressman John Lewis once said, voting is the most powerful tool we have to create a more perfect union. In recent years, from the January 6th insurrection to election conspiracies to threats against polling sites in New Jersey, we have seen an alarming rise in dangerous rhetoric and threats against election workers and polling places. Sometimes it's from other countries trying to do harm regardless of the political outcome, but wanting to mess around in our democracy. Sometimes it is people trying to influence an election from either side. We have also seen repeated attacks on access to the ballot box from this administration. The Justice Department has turned away from its mission of enforcing the Voting Rights Act, and the President has issued an unlawful executive order to overhaul our nation's elections that would purge American citizens from voter rolls and make it harder for the men and women of our military to vote. Just as the President overstepped his authority by implementing the across-the-board tariffs, I was at the Supreme Court oral argument today, along with Senator Lee and Senator Markey. I will say it was a well-argued case with pointed questions from the justices. I am very impressed by some of the arguments that were made against these tariffs by both the states and the lawyers for the small businesses, as well as some of the justices' discussions when it came to the tariffs, about Congress's right under the Constitution, under Article 1, our authority to assess taxes, not an unconstitutional delegation or an overreach by the administration. And so we have seen this overstep with regard to the tariffs, which is having calamitous effects on my constituents, small businesses, farmers, ranchers. One soybean farmer told me it was the perfect storm of ugly. But we have also seen this overstep when it comes to the Constitution and people's rights to vote. The White House recently confirmed that the President intends to continue his unlawful attacks on voting rights by issuing a new executive order targeting mail-in voting. Mail-in voting is nothing new. It dates back to the Civil War, and the President himself has said that voting by mail, voting early, and voting on Election Day are all good options. I agree, and Americans across the country agree. In Minnesota, we have made it easier, not harder, for all eligible Americans to vote, including by giving everyone the chance to vote by mail. We have people who vote by mail. Some of these states like Utah and Oregon, they have almost the vast majority of people vote by mail. We're not actually that. We're kind of a mix. We have the highest voter turnout in the country, nearly every election in the country. I go into a hardware store or a cafe, and I know that 70–80% of the people have voted. Sometimes they'll come up to me and say, well, I didn't vote for you, but I did like this one thing you did, or I have an idea for you. That means something in a democracy. But that's because we make it easier to vote, not only with the mail-in voting and the drop-off ballots, but we also have it with same-day registration, which when you look at states that have that, whether they're red or blue or purple, that's probably the most defining thing about if you're going to have high voter turnout. And when you have high voter turnout, believe me, my state has elected everyone from Jesse Ventura to Michelle Bachmann to me. But what all of us have in common is that we had extraordinary high voter turnout when the people got elected. And that makes people feel like they're part of the franchise. That makes them feel like, wow, we're part of this democracy. We're not left out of it. And that alone is worth something in a democracy, regardless of who gets elected. In 2024, 36 states allowed voters to cast their votes by mail, and nearly 1/3 of the voters did. And that is post-pandemic. So instead of creating barriers to the ballot box, we need to expand access to the polls to ensure all eligible Americans can vote in the way that works best for them, regardless of their zip code. That's why I have led the effort with Ranking Member Padilla to advance common sense bills to protect our democracy, including the Freedom to Vote Act. That bill will increase ballot access and reform our campaign finance system to ensure that our democracy is of, by, and for the American people. And I will also note, with regard to some of the things that happened coming out of Texas, it also would make sure that we have a fair system when it comes to the House of Representatives and districts and what's going on there. That's also why I also strongly voted to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to restore and strengthen key portions of the Voting Rights Act. And it's why I've worked to give reliable federal support to state and local governments so that they can continue to administer safe, secure elections. This is something we should all be able to agree on. We must support our local election offices and help them maintain their election infrastructure to keep pace with new technology and combat cybersecurity threats. We should also be able to agree that we should stand by our election workers, including volunteers, who face a barrage of threats and intimidation. I remember hearing, when I chaired the Rules Committee, from the election officers in places like Pennsylvania, where a Republican election official was threatened simply because he upheld the election results. His entire family was threatened. Or secretaries of state who have the voicemails of the recordings of their families being threatened or their homes being threatened. And you think about these volunteers, particularly in rural areas or election officials where they don't have the police there nearby to protect them. That's why I lead the Election Worker Protection Act, legislation to provide states the resources to recruit and train election workers and ensure their safety. Protecting election officials should not be a partisan issue. The security of our elections is directly tied to the security of our election workers. Nothing is more fundamental to our democracy than our free and fair elections. Voting is how the American people make their voices heard and ensure their elected leaders are held accountable. So while we continue to see attacks on our democracy, it is our duty to never give up hope. Every election, it is inspiring to see Americans, Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike, exercise their sacred right to vote however they choose. It was quite a reminder last night how people are going to vote, and they're going to vote for their families, and they're going to vote for their own economic security, and they're going to vote because they believe in our democracy. Even in an off-year election, when no senator is on the ballot, when no president is on the ballot, where not even a member of Congress is on the ballot, but 2 governors, and some referendums about the judiciary, and some referendums about the elections, and some local officials and mayors, people turned out, and they turned out in record numbers. So I hope that makes people realize that our democracy is thriving, but our democracy only thrives when we make it so people can vote. And I have been so proud of my state over the years. And again, we're a purple state. We've elected Republican and Democratic governors in the last decades. We've elected Republican senators in the last decades. We have a split legislature. One house is Republican. The state house, the state Senate is Democratic. There was an election last night on that front. We have an evenly split congressional delegation, 4 and 4, because we don't have gerrymandering, and we have actually competitive elections a number of years for these congressional seats, and there we are with the 1 or 2 highest voting turnout in the nation. Why is that? Because people feel like they're a part of it. That's what we want to have happen in this nation. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. The absence of a quorum.
Are we just gonna allow the president? We just gonna allow this president to do whatever they want to do? No, that's not how that goes. That's why we had a referendum. They had a referendum on them last night, and they're saying you Republicans better start pushing back on this president because we don't want what he's pushing. And you're gonna lose the House, and you're gonna lose the Senate, and you're gonna get a president that's impeached if you all don't start pushing back on him. That's the long and short. You all have to start pushing back on your president. If they don't show up in 5 more minutes to continue their voting, so you allowed Biden to destroy the country. What do you mean Biden destroyed the country, Summer? Do I really have to do all of the research? Why can't you do some research and find out that's not what Biden did? Why can't you do any research? Why do y'all just come on here and say anything? You just can't come on here and say anything. You don't have any proof that Biden destroyed the country at all. You have no proof. Okay. Let me look up this Grok. I have to look something up in Grok. Over Biden's presidential term, did he harm the country? That's all I'm going to ask Grok. Did he harm the country? And how? Did Biden harm the country and how? Let's see what this Grok, what the hell is his name? Elon Musk. Let's see what Elon Musk people said. Okay? Let's see what Elon's thing said. Okay. Let's see. Okay. He said economic cost of living. Many Americans believed his presidency hurt the country on issues like the cost of living and inflation. They think that the inflation, rising prices in food, reflect policy shortcomings. The argument, rising costs reduce living standards, hurt middle and lower class incomes, eroded public trust. Now, that's what happened. Did you take into account COVID-19? Let's see. Damn, I ain't say write all that. Okay. When you include COVID-19, here's how here's how the harm changes the assessment of Biden's presidency. Because the pandemic was so massive, many of the negative outcomes, slowed growth, high unemployment, inflation, debt, cannot be solely attributed to the administration. The baseline was very difficult. So the extent that one claims that Biden harmed the country, you have to ask how much of the harm was driven by global shocks versus policy missteps. In short, yes, the pandemic both mitigates some claims of harm and also raises the bar for effective leadership. Okay. So we get it. We get some of that. But that's not all Biden's fault. Not all Biden's fault. Okay. I just did. I don't need to do no more. That's done and over with. We can't compare to what this president is doing. This president is flying by the seat of his pants, and he's a shitty human being, and he's a shitty negotiator, and he's a shitty ambassador. It just is what it is. Okay. It just is what it is. He's a shitty person, a shitty president, and a shitty ambassador. It is what it is. I get it. You got to say something. But we all know I can't be the only one, because if I was the only one, you Republicans would have won some seats. I didn't hear you win any seats last night. I didn't hear you guys win any seats, which tells us we don't want what you're trying to sell. It just is what it is. We don't want what he's trying to sell. The president is a shitty person. He's a shitty president, and he's a shitty humanitarian, because he doesn't care one way or the other for the poor working man. Okay? That's all. He's just a shitty. There's no damn peace in Palestine. South Korea and North Korea, are you serious right now? He's a shitty person. Well, he's personally a shitty person. And he's a failed, and he hasn't brought prosperity to this United States. So he's a shitty person, and he's a shitty businessman, but that's okay. We got to live with him. We got to deal with him for another 12 months. Then we can step to him with some new shoes on. Okay? And then it will be what it is. Gen X Jaw says you're a shitty human being. Now you see Democrats how they come in the chat and then they call names. Don't have any facts, any proof. They crashing out for their orange thug. They're crashing out for their orange thug. I ain't made no claims. What claims have I made, Jacob Johns? What claims specifically have I made? I haven't made any claims. I've claimed that your president is a shitty human being, which he is. I've claimed that he's a shitty president, which he is. Those are not lies or false claims. Those are truths. Okay? No, you didn't hear Donald Trump until you were told to. You're the zombie. I ain't never had to listen to him. You're the zombie. You're the zombie. You're over in somebody's chat that you don't even know, crashing out for an orange thug who don't give a damn about whether you sleep or take a dirt nap, Jacob. You're the zombie. What the hell? Over here crashing out, calling me names over somebody you don't even know. That's wild. I swear, zombies are wild. Crashing out over somebody that they don't even know. And he always, what do you mean? What do you mean facts? What do you mean facts, Jeremy? He just gave $40 billion to a foreign country and their country is failing. He gave them $40 billion in their country. And he got people over here starving. What do you mean? That's a fact. What do you mean? Boy, I swear, what's wrong with y'all? He just gave $40 billion to a foreign country, and you over here crashing out on him when he don't give a damn about your American compadres. That's wild to me. So don't tell me that he gives a damn about you if he's giving away $40 billion to a whole nother country to prop that country up when he needs to spend that money over here getting our farmers back together. Y'all get into the game. Freaking zombies. What the hell? Y'all crashing out over somebody that don't give a damn about you. What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? Sure, Robert. Sure, Robert. Yeah, please tell us that. Please tell us that he cares about us so much. Tells us that he cares. This is wild, Jeremy. This is wild. The MAGAs gave a rich man their money, and the rich man gave their money to other rich men, and they consider him caring about them. This is wild. Jacob, you need to leave the chat. If you can't accept facts, you need to leave the chat. Never have I said one lie. The man just gave $40 billion to another country. And you over here caping for somebody who gave away money from your country and your country is failing. That's wild. You over here crashing out on somebody. That's wild. What do we stand for, Jacob? We stand for helping the poor, the veterans, the handicapped, the disabled, the poor people. That's what we stand for as Democratic Party. What does your party stand for, Jacob? Please list them. Rattle them off just like I did. What do you believe in? What does your party believe in? You're wild, Sir Richard Stewart. You're over here crashing out on somebody who gave $40 billion to a failed country over the people in his own country. You're over here crashing out with a guy who gave a rich guy. You gave a rich guy your money, and that rich guy gave your money to other rich guys. And you're over here crashing out. Wow. You zombies are crazy. He just gave away $40 billion and then blew up the farming, blew up his own farmers in his own country. And you over here crashing out on me. That's wild. Sir Richard, that's wild. You're a zombie. What lies did I tell? Not one lie. That's wild. He over here crashing out on somebody who gave $40 billion to somebody in his own country is failing, and he giving money away to another country, and he crashing out on me? That's wild. That's wild. Sir Richard, put in the chat what Donald Trump has done for the people who make between 30,000 and 150,000. No, I'm not crashing out at all, Sir Richard. You're the one who's crashing out. You're the one. We already know we already know he's trash. We don't need to crash out on him. We are coming off a fresh wind. We are coming off a fresh win all night long. What are you talking about, Sir Richard Stewart? You're crashing out. Your government, you're the retard that gave your money to a rich man, and that rich man gave it to other rich men. Wow. Wow. He's crashing out. He's crashing out. Y'all need to pat Sir Richard on his back. He's crashing out. The 30,000 to 150K, they don't need no help. They just gave all of their money to a rich man who gave his money to other rich men. That's all. And then he gave $40 billion to another country instead of giving it to you. Sir Richard Stewart zombie. You're a zombie and you don't even know it. He over here crashing out on me instead of crashing out on his fake president. He's over here crashing out on me. Do that even make sense? Man, that don't even make no sense. I'm just flabbergasted. You're over here crashing out on me, and your president is the one giving away your money. And you over here got a cape on. You over here got a cape on. Are you wild? You're what? Boy, Sir Richard, you wild. Just wow. Why are EBT people upset about where tax money goes? If you don't notice this, Blake, most people that are on here are not on food stamps. I just wanted to let you know, most of us that are on here are just regular, ordinary, individual people, but we do have compassion, right? Do you have anything other to say? No, because that's the only thing that describes what you're doing. How are you over here crashing out on me and you ain't crashed out on the president that's gave away your money? What? Are you serious right now? Wow. MAGA, y'all ain't never thought y'all was winning. Y'all ain't never thought y'all was winning. Y'all knew that y'all had a shitty message. You knew you had a shitty message. Okay? You knew that. Don't come over here like you winning. You're not winning. Okay? You have a shitty message. And nobody likes the shitty message. Every president has given away foreign aid. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Look at the delusion. Look at the coping mechanisms. Oh, God. God. Coping mechanisms. He gave money to other foreign countries. He knows that he gave away our money. You wrote it for somebody. You gave your money to a rich man, and the rich man put your money in his pocket, and he put the money in his buddy's pocket. Don't nobody care what he won, Jacob. What did he win last night? He didn't win anything last night. And you can only say you're as good as your last election. That's all you can say, is you're good as your last election. That's all. Don't be mad. There was a blue wave last night. Then there's going to be a blue wave next time. You gotta be, because you over here crashing out. I can understand if you came over and you argued facts and you argued statistics, but you're not over here doing that. You're over here calling me names. So that tells me you crashing out because you don't know how to respond in a responsible and adult way. So that means you're crashing out. Yes. And most human beings would look at the poor. Most human beings that were in charge of money would look at the poor and say, oh, would I give money to the rich or the poor? Do I want to help the poor or do I want to give away rent? And then all of a sudden, he's America first. America first? Yeah, Blake, we already went through that. We already know that's a fake stat. So please, don't even go there. Please, don't go there. That's just dumb. It's just dumb. Yeah. 50. Yeah. Excuse me. I got the flu. I've got the flu. They believe anything. You know, instead of educating themselves, they just want to call names. Okay? They just want to call names. He's been a career crook. He's been a crook since he came on the scene, since he got money from his parents. And I can't wait till the session. I can't wait till the Congress is back in session, because I want them Epstein files released, because I want to see what your president has been doing. I want to see what the president has been up to with his Epstein friend. Okay. I want to see. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. I want to see. And I need you all to put in the chat, what has the big beautiful bill done for people between the wages of 30,000 and 150? I really want to know what he did that has all of you guys over here crashing out on me instead of crashing out on your president. I really would like to know. Okay. And I really want to see the Epstein files, because I believe there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in there. Who cares about see, that's the thing, James. Nobody would have cared about the Epstein file. I don't know whether you're right or left, but the MAGA people kept asking about the Epstein files. They kept asking about the Epstein files, okay? So since they asked about him and he got into office, he was supposed to produce the Epstein files. And he didn't. He hid them. He got somebody to hide them or something. So why ain't people calling for those files loud and high and proud? Why aren't they doing that? Okay. Excuse me. They're not doing it because he's in the files. He knows he's in the file. He knows all of that. Okay. Not all of them have been released, square body. Stop it. Stop it. Everybody knows all the files have not been released. Everybody knows that. There's still more to be released. and people want to see what's going on in the file. People want the people who are in the files to be held accountable. You don't want to hold him accountable. We all want to hold him accountable. What do you mean? This is what we want. We want him and any other goofy people that were touching children. We want them all held accountable. So therefore, we want the whole files released. And as I stated, it was you MAGA people. It was you MAGA people who asked for the files first. Y'all asked for the Epstein file. We just jumped on board after you guys asked for them. Don't be mad at us that now it's a horse that got loose from the reins. Don't be mad at us that your president is hiding the files. Don't be mad at us. Just ask for the files to be released so we can get this over with. At the third rail, I'm sorry you feel like that, but there's a million other channels over here on YouTube, and you're free to go over there whenever you feel like it. I know you don't like facts because you MAGA people never like facts. You like somebody to pat you on the back to make you feel good. That's not what happens here. What happens here is I talk about the facts. I don't pat you on the back because you're MAGA. You're no one special, and you cannot bait me. So stop it and start talking facts, not garbage. Yeah, we got a bunch of Sambos and Aunt Jemimas. Yes, we do. Hell, yes, we do. And we want to see them Epstein files. And we want to see them Epstein files. And we had a blue wave last night. Third rail. Hey, 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 hey. Them Sambos and them Africans. Came out. What is it? Sambos and Aunt Jemima. And they all came out. Hell yeah. All of us came out. Then the whole point is you should be asking for your government to release the files. Your government, your MAGA co-conspirators, your zombies, you're a zombie, have your zombie army get the Epstein files out, and then we will be okay. Okay? We will be okay once we get those out. You do the zombie work. You zombies, I'm just beating you zombies over the head. That's all. I'm just trying to beat you zombies over the head. That's all. Because you zombies act like you can't do anything but open your mouth, put your hands out in front of you, and walk. Because you listen to everything and you don't do anything. So I need you zombies to get the Epstein files rolling. I need you zombies to start pushing.
Recognize the senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, are we in a quorum call?
Yes, we are.
Oh, here we
Mr.
are.
President, I ask unanimous consent to vitiate proceedings under the quorum call.
Without objection.
Today is the anniversary of the election of President Trump in 2024. And today, as the shutdown of our federal government is officially the longest it's ever been, 36 days, because we can't come to agreement between our parties and our chambers. In fact, the House isn't even at work and hasn't been for weeks because Republicans won't work with us to ensure access to health care. We're in a dangerous and unsettled place here at home.
Unfortunately for you, James, we won all of the election last night. We burnt that ass. We smoked that ass. And we gonna continue to smoke that ass. Don't be mad, James. Don't be mad.
But we're also in a dangerous and unsettled place abroad and around the world. My role in appropriations in this Congress is as the senior Democrat on the committee, the subcommittee that funds all of our defense and intelligence. And given that role, where I've worked with Senator McConnell, the chairman, to write the bill that we should be moving forward that would fully fund the security apparatus of the United States, I wanted to come to the floor for a few minutes today and talk with my colleagues and our nation about what it is that actually keeps us safe at home and abroad. For my entire life, we have relied upon the U.S. military, and we will soon celebrate Veterans Day next week, when all of us should thank those who have served or who are serving. We've relied on them to be something that we often take for granted: nonpartisan, non-political, and all volunteer, professional, career military. And for that to be sustained, for the folks to continue to step forward, raise their right hand, and swear to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, we need a nation that supports our warfighters. For it is our warfighters who answer the call to serve and to defend, no matter what party's in charge, to respect and obey the chain of command, and to execute all lawful orders. I think we rely on the best equipped, best trained, most professional military in the world, and in partnership with them, a global network of alliances. We are the envy of the world, not only because of our weapons, the most advanced and sophisticated weapon systems, but because we have the best trained, best respected, most supported military in the world. And that additional factor is something stronger than envy, which is respect. I've traveled over my 15 years here on the Foreign Relations Committee to dozens of countries on literally every continent, and have seen directly the respect that other armed forces around the world have for our military, for its civilian control.
No. We flipped a whole bunch of counties, Blake. Stop it. We flipped counties in the South. Stop it.
Its professionalism.
Don't be a hater. Just be a congratulator. That's all.
Its training and equipment. I grew up in the shadow of the Vietnam War. It was raging as I was a young man. I still remember being in.
You wasn't saying square body. You wasn't wasn't saying nothing about Trump when he ran all over. The map became red with Donald Trump last November. You wasn't saying that bullshit then, was you? Stop it. Just don't be a hater. Congratulate. That's all. Big wave coming. Big wave coming.
Elementary school with classmates who had older brothers in combat. I still remember as Saigon fell when I was in middle school, and as the POWs, including our former colleague John McCain, were released from years of imprisonment, and being shocked at the way some returning veterans were treated, disrespected, at how there had been a real loss of a sense of respect and appreciation for those who served. Over years, our armed forces have earned their way back to a place of deep and broad respect in the hearts of the American people. Over the years that I served as county executive, and I went to ceremony after ceremony as units of the Delaware National Guard deployed over and over, and then often 9 months or a year later, we would welcome them home at wonderful homecoming celebrations. I saw deep and broad support and respect for the men and women of the armed forces of the United States. Tragically, I've also had the opportunity along the flight line at Dover Air Force Base to welcome home America's fallen, to get to know the families grieving over their loss, and this year to be joined by members of the House and Senate as we welcomed home our fallen heroes who had died serving us.
Jeremy, I say that every day. Jeremy, I say it every day. You are so right there.
Overseas. The difference in tenor, in respect, in affection for the men and women of our armed forces over the arc of my lifetime, from the 70s during the Vietnam War to today, has been striking.
I understand that, third rail, that your party can't do two things at the same time, but our party can. Our party can actually put forth policies for the greater good and still have racists in its parties, but they can't put policy ahead for other people besides themselves. Y'all aren't capable of doing that over on the Republican side. I'm sorry. That it's not going to make any difference. You're just talking goofy, third rail.
And today, as I rise to speak on the one-year anniversary of President Trump's election, I just wanted to look back and reflect how in that year, he and Secretary Hegseth have set us on a course that risks losing again all of that accumulated goodwill, all of that respect. I'm going to talk about how they've weakened our alliances, politicized our military, dulled down our military readiness, and brought us
Eyes, are you talking to me? Oh, the blackface thing? Oh, I have no idea.
closer to needless, even dangerous wars of choice. All of that leaving us weaker and less safe as we confront the most dangerous world since the end of the Cold War. President Trump is a master of distraction, so you don't ever have time to step back and look at the bigger pattern. It's amazing how many times a day the topics change. Are we talking about the tearing down of the East Wing or planning for a new ballroom? Or a renewed threat to invade a country in Africa, apparently Nigeria this week?
It's at the end of last night's show. It's at the end of last night's show. Last night's show, and it's at the end. It's almost at the end. Yeah, it was that 10 o'clock show. Yeah, it was that 10 o'clock show. I came back.
It is a constant, unending smorgasbord of tweets and greatest hits designed to prevent us with its blizzard from ever seeing any pattern. Well, 1 year after his election, I wanted to take a few minutes and show that pattern to you today. In his first 10 months as President of the United States, President Trump has fired or pushed out more than 15 of our most senior admirals and generals, starting with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Then I definitely know you not. I know you not black, third rail, or you one of those coons, because you don't. The Civil Rights Bill wasn't for you. That's your problem. Why are you worried about the Civil Rights Bill? It wasn't for you. If you're not black, it wasn't for you.
And the chief of naval operations, fired because they were somehow considered DEI hires or too woke, something I find to be utterly without foundation in their service or in the opinion of others who served with them in the armed forces.
Absolutely, we got left-wing racism. Blake, you need to talk to third rail. Third rail seems to be an expert at black racism and white racism. Talk to third rail. Third rail know what's going on. Third rail's one of those coon brothers.
He hijacked the 250th anniversary parade to celebrate.
Are they acting up in here, Natural KRC? Of course they're acting up. Hey, Natural. Of course they're acting up.
Celebrate the history of the U.S. Army and turned it into a birthday parade for himself. More recently, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth gathered all of our most senior military leaders from around the world for a speech here near Washington in Quantico.
Don't you wish, Roadrunner, don't you wish that let's go, Democrats, let's go.
A massive national security risk just so they could give political speeches about grooming and about using the military against the enemy within. Pulling these decorated and seasoned men and women from core jobs literally around the world, protecting America against our adversaries on the front lines to come back and be props for a highly political speech. In unprecedented decisions in modern times, the President has federalized the National Guards from California, from Illinois, from Oregon over the objections of.
Last night was just a referendum on what the people wanted from our government. What they don't want is what President Trump is giving us. They don't want that. And the problem is, and it probably wouldn't even be a problem if you Republicans pushed back on some of the things he's doing. But you ain't pushing back on anything. That's the problem. You ain't pushed back on nothing. That's why I say you guys don't stand for nothing, because you don't push back on nothing.
Governors, and deployed them into cities over the objections of mayors who say, we can deal with the challenges of crime.
Yes.
If you want to send us federal resources, we'd welcome sending us additional federal law enforcement like the ATF and the FBI. They also, this administration, mobilized the Marines to go in to Los Angeles. All of this takes away our military from their central missions and training for partisan political ends.
We can't make you MAGAs do research. We can't make y'all do research. That's all we can do is point you in the right direction because you act like you don't like to do research. People got to tell you X, Y, and Z. We got to tell you they don't give. I got to tell you, I got to put in the chat the bill, the law that says it's illegal to give immigrants Section 8 food stamps, EBT, all that stuff. I got to put the law in the chat. And y'all then don't even believe it then. So when we tell you things, you still don't believe it. If I tell you facts, I keep giving you fact after fact after fact, and you don't believe me, that means you're a zombie. Most of y'all are zombies, like Third Rail is a zombie.
This brings us to a second key pillar of our national security, the best trained and equipped military in the world. Secretary Hegseth, at the beginning of this year, supported a full-year continuing resolution for the Department of Defense for the first time ever. And Senator McConnell and I, as the chair and ranking of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, were struck at how much harm that does. We are on the verge of doing it again for a terrible second year. Ask any senior military leader. It makes it impossible to plan, and nothing requires more stable, certain long-term funding than designing and building the next generation of fighter aircraft, building and deploying nuclear-powered submarines, recruiting and training the world's best military, and then equipping them with things on land, air, and sea that make them the most lethal armed forces on Earth.
What the Americans said last night is they're tired of hearing about what Biden didn't do. They're tired of hearing about the trans, the gays, the immigrants. We don't like the immigrants. The 13% is 50%. The American public is tired of these things. We're trying to move forward in the country. We're trying to get new policies on the table. I already asked the Republicans in here, the MAGAs in here, what do they support? And not one of them have put one thing in the chat that we support. They said, oh, we support America first. No, you don't, because the president don't support America first. So I'm saying, put in the chat what you all believe. Put in the chat what the big, beautiful bill did for any of you guys between 30 and 150K. I really want to know. Because nobody can tell, none of you MAGAs can tell me what y'all got out of this big, beautiful bill.
Earth. We can't do that if Secretary Hegseth continues to support full-year continuing resolutions. It's also important that our warfighters be respected because they know they have the support and engagement of the American people on difficult and dangerous missions, something that's lacking when they refuse to fully brief, support, and engage the Senate of the United States, a challenge that is happening right now. We need a plan, we need preparation, and we need clarity to Congress about what is going on in the Caribbean, what preparations are being made with regards to Venezuela. I have no objection to the idea that we need to work together to strengthen the interdiction of drugs coming to the United States. But this body, given the Constitution and our role, deserves to be consulted and included so that we can build consensus, common agreement to support a plan of action so that our warfighters, the men and women of our armed forces, know we have their back. That is the best way to send them into harm's way. All of this is built on another of President Trump's broken promises. He ran on lowering costs, making America healthy again, and avoiding new foreign wars. On the campaign trail, I often heard that was one of his most popular promises. Since then, the threats to start new wars with friends and allies and foes alike have been dizzying. Canada, Mexico, Denmark, Panama, Colombia, Nigeria. Our president tosses these things off casually. But in a meeting I had early in his term with leaders from...
Y'all can't do it. You can't do it. Arthur, y'all just can't do it, can you? You just can't say what you support. This is how it's done, Arthur Williams. This is how it's done. us Democrats care about and we support our veterans, our homeless, our elderly, our poor children, disabled. We care about those things. We care about making their lives better. We care about those things. You care about hating. We hate the trans. We hate the gays. We hate the immigrants. We hate the browns. We hate the blacks. We hate the whites. You ain't saying nothing because you don't stand on anything. Every time we turn around, the first thing you guys say is, oh, we don't like this. We don't like that. We don't like this. We don't like that. Okay? We give billion. There you go again, Arthur. Did nobody ask you what you thought we cared about? I just told you what we cared about. Now you trying to tell me what we care about. And I asked you what y'all care about. Stop worrying about what we care about. I just told you what Democrats care about. You ain't got nothing that what y'all care about. Y'all just got hate. You don't stand on nothing. You don't stand on nothing.
Denmark and Greenland, they were alarmed, frightened, concerned about how a trusted NATO ally could threaten to seize Greenland. A seemingly casual remark that was then reinforced and repeated over and over. And I am worried that we are now sleepwalking into a war with Venezuela and an effort to overthrow Maduro, all while leaving the People's Republic of China freer rein to run roughshod over the Indo-Pacific while they massively increase the scope and scale of their aggression.
That's it. I don't know whether y'all slow or y'all just don't understand English. I said, what does the Republican Party stand for? What do you stand for to help your country move forward? We like closed borders over here too. We believe in America first over here too. But what else do y'all believe in? Y'all can't tell me nothing. Why y'all, you can't tell me nothing. Do y'all believe in helping the homeless? Do you all believe in helping your elderly? Do you all believe in helping poor kids? Then why ain't y'all supporting? Y'all don't believe in none of that. I haven't seen one of y'all Republicans say anything similar to the 5 things I put on my list as what Democrats care about. I haven't seen 5 things that y'all care about. That's wild. And they want to run the country. They want to run the country for us, and they don't care about none of the people that's in the country. They can't name one policy.
Let's be clear, there's no love lost between me and Maduro, a brutal dictator, but we should have clarity about how and why we might use our armed forces. Last, a key pillar to our security.
That's right.
For the last 8 decades, since the end of the Second World War, has been a remarkable global network of powerful alliances.
That's correct.
I've long said one of our key advantages over the People's Republic of China is our network of trusted and deep alliances. China has nervous neighbors and client states, and President Trump is putting all of that at risk. Our adversaries are increasingly aligning. Russians are using Iranian drones, North Korean soldiers, and Chinese technology and funding to help carry out their brutal war of aggression in Ukraine. Meanwhile, our alliances are fraying. As I mentioned, the president threatened to invade NATO allies like Canada and Denmark, kicked President Vladimir Zelensky out of the Oval Office, but rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin, held up crucial arm deliveries and sales to nations that rely on us for their security.
I don't know about nobody else, but I'm tired of the rich people taking our money and not giving us anything for our money. They send the money way out to other countries, and then we come second or third. I'm tired of that. I am trying to get people to be on the same page about stuff that they care about. Things we can do that are similar that we all want done. We all want term limits. We all want these old farts out of there, and we need fresh blood in Washington. We need people to stop paying. Okay, we want people to stop paying for them to sell us out, for us middle class people to get sold out. I am trying to find things that we can find in common. Stop telling me about trans and gay people. Stop doing that. That's not an issue that we need to take forward. We need issues that we take forward and we present to these people and we find a candidate that's going to do these things for us. Stop telling me about gays and trans. I don't care about that issue. We care about moving the country forward, helping our elderly, our handicapped, helping people get decent jobs, minimum wage, getting health care for everybody so it's reasonable. Stop talking to me about gays and trans.
From Ukraine to Taiwan, and put at risk our commitment to Article 5 and to collective security that's been at the heart of NATO since its founding. The tariff deals our president has imposed on some of our closest, most trusted allies that have free trade agreements with us, like South Korea, has put them profoundly on the back foot as they look at whether they can count on our security agreements. All of this means that over the past year, President Trump has steadily hacked away at the pillars of our military that protect our nation, making it less stable, making it more likely that the trust and confidence the American people have in our warfighters will crumble. This is a critical and concerning, even alarming picture from which he's trying to distract us. The nation we had a year ago was strong, secure, and moving in a positive direction. Today, I'm gravely concerned about the constant distraction and the threats and moves against our allies, our partners, and the ways in which we have undermined our warfighters. So what should we do from here? Pass our bipartisan appropriations bills. Put on this floor, pass and get to the president the defense appropriations bill that I've worked so hard on this year, and all the other appropriations bills that move us out of this cycle of rescissions and reconciliation and continuing resolutions and back to reliable, steady bipartisan support. Strengthen our alliances.
I know you did not come over here, Tyler, and start talking about race. I know you did not come over here and start talking about what a black person you think is doing over here. When nobody is talking about race, you come over here talking about race. No, we're not doing that over here. Stand on your own argument. Don't blame black people for the failure in your life. Don't blame nobody but the failure in your life on you.
Reassure our nervous partners. End this recklessness with tariffs that is an on-again, off-again regime where these taxes, these tariffs, add to Americans' bottom line in a disastrous way.
Thank you, Sassy. Hunger doesn't have a side. And it's people that need those food stamps. Disabled, veterans, elderly, handicapped. All of those people need help. I just ain't never met nobody. I just don't understand why you all are willing to give a rich man your money so he can give it away to another rich man instead of giving money. And then y'all mad at Becky because she gonna get $10 or $20 or $100 extra in food stamps. I'm confused. You sit on here bitching about Becky getting $100 extra on food stamps or Bum Keisha on the internet dancing to a TikTok because she got $1,000, but you ain't worried about what the billionaires is doing with your money. Somebody who don't even need your money getting your money. Stop that garbage. That don't even make sense. Y'all, you don't even make no sense. Don't come on here whining about people need to get a job and then get all food. Stop whining about that. You didn't worry about giving away your money to rich people. Stop worrying about giving your money to poor people. Man, y'all, some of y'all just dumb.
And destabilize trust and confidence from our partners. and refocus on training and preparing for real wars, not culture wars. This is how we keep our nation safe.
We trying to move the country forward. We trying to get you back into the game. Stop worrying about this little stuff. We have bigger fish to fry. Okay? We need to get this country back rolling. We need to stop giving away money to other countries first. We are supposed to be America first. Get into the game. Come on.
Just a few days ago, I was up in my father's hometown of Boston and drove through Lexington and Concord, where 250 years ago this year, our forefathers took up arms against the crown and began what was a long-shot fight, a revolution for liberty and independence for...
Wait a minute, hold on. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. We have some of the smartest people on this planet in this country. Don't you think we could get some of the smartest people to figure out how to save Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security if you just let them do it? Don't you think we could get that solved if people let them do it?
Our nation. We have to remember all who have taken up arms and served our nation. I'm from a family of veterans. My brother, my sister-in-law, my father, my uncles, my great-great-grandfather, and back to the Revolution. Members of my family have stepped forward and served.
Roadrunner over here, y'all. Roadrunner over here caping for rich people. A poor Dusty is over here caping for rich people. That's wild. A poor dusty human being is over here caping for a rich dude. Are you wild? Wow.
For all who have done the same, who've signed on the dotted line up to and including their lives, committed their willingness to sacrifice, we owe them nothing less than the full measure of devotion that says we will support them. That support requires engagement and trust from this body, engagement and trust with our allies, and the support that our servicemen and women deserve. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
If we could only get people to understand that, Natural KRC, that we have to figure out, and we have to hold them accountable. We have to start holding our government accountable. That means the people who support Donald Trump need to be holding him accountable instead of shielding him, instead of caping for him. They need to start holding him accountable. No, you're not going to send X, Y, and Z over to Argentina. You're going to help us right here in America. You're going to build high-speed rail here in America. You're going to help fund school lunches for all the kids in America. You're going to do America first. You all are supporters of Donald Trump. You need to be holding him accountable to put America first. Come on, shit. I'm not doing this shit just to be doing this shit. I care about the country. I love the country like y'all, but God damn it, I'm gonna keep calling them names and I'm gonna keep talking about them until we start holding these people in Washington accountable. They need to put America first. It don't matter whether the broke will be broke. Roadrunner, stop wearing a cape for rich men. That's wild. You're over here caping for rich. Are you on your knees yet? Staying on your knees for the rich man. What's wrong with you?
Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Nevada.
Mr. President, President Trump promised Americans during his campaign
Yes, Jeremy,
that
yes.
if elected, he would lower costs on day one. And Americans trusted him to do so. Yet, all President Trump has done from day one of his presidency until now
Blake, most of us don't give a damn whether we be rich. What we give a damn about is being able to pay our rent, getting us food, making sure our children are not starving in this country, making sure we don't have veterans on the street, disabled on the street. I'd be happy just to make sure all of those things got taken care of before I start whining about being a millionaire or being rich. Most of us would. What are you talking about? We talking about moving together as a country. As a country. We got debt we got to pay, and this guy's giving away $40 billion? Come on.
Has been to raise costs for our families and our businesses. One of the most outrageous examples of this is with his erratic blanket tariffs that he's imposed on our allies and trading partners, as you've heard from my colleague from Delaware talking about. But let me be clear, these tariffs for the American public are nothing but taxes. Tariffs are taxes. That's what the American people are seeing every single day. And many of them are seeing it first thing in the morning when they have their cup of coffee. This is an unacceptable burden to be putting on the American people, and the tools this administration is using to do so are clearly unconstitutional. They're actually being heard in the Supreme Court today. The good news is Congress has the authority to do something about it. And there's bipartisan, bicameral agreement that we not only can we act, but we must. That's why I'm here today to pass the bill that I wrote with Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. It's called the No Coffee Tax Act. Very simple bill. It would roll back President Trump's tax on our coffee. Let me explain why this is important. The United States is the largest importer of coffee in the world. Why? Because even though we all love our morning coffee, the United States does not have the natural climate or growing conditions needed to produce the amounts of coffee Americans consume every day. 99% of the coffee in this country comes from another country. Until President Trump took office, Americans had never paid broad tariffs on coffee imports. But now this president has decided to recklessly impose these blanket tariffs on our top sources for coffee. Brazil at 50%, and other main coffee producers like Vietnam, Indonesia, Colombia, Ethiopia are being tariffed out.
Yeah, but I heard our taxes and our coffee. I heard coffee went up for real. I don't drink coffee, but I heard it went up real bad. That's bad. When a lot of Americans drink coffee, that will take a lot of money right there. You just imagine if coffee is $5 and it went up to $17. We could have put 5 or 6 into a kitty, and then every kid could have had free lunch for all the people who drink coffee. I just know I be thinking of those kind of things. We could have helped kids get lunch.
Just rates. Now, I don't need to tell you what that's meant for Americans, because we've all felt it every single day. I'm hearing from my coffee roasters and wholesalers in Nevada who have been forced to raise their prices to keep up with these tariffs. That is filtering down to local coffee shops, our small businesses that are in turn having to raise their prices on consumers. The price of a cup of coffee has skyrocketed nearly 40% since last year. 40%. This is happening all over the country. And it's not just businesses where coffee is their main product. Restaurants that serve breakfast are being impacted as well. This is what these irresponsible tariffs have done to Americans. Because, as I've said,
that's crazy. I haven't really looked at coffee, so I don't know. But if coffee went from $6 to $18, damn, that's wild. That's crazy.
Tariffs are taxes. Now, I know that responsible, targeted tariffs on our adversaries can be good for American workers and our national security. There's a smart way to do this, however. Taxing our coffee and raising prices for Americans isn't it. The bipartisan, bicameral bill Senator Paul and I introduced would bring coffee tariffs back to the level they were at before President Trump took office, 0%. The Senate has already passed legislation supported by both Democrats and Republicans to repeal President Trump's tariffs on Canada and Brazil, as well as his global tariffs on the rest of our trading partners. So the no coffee tax is equally important to the American public. Prices are already too high in this country. Getting rid of this unnecessary coffee tax will make Americans' lives and their mornings just a little bit easier. For that reason, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of my bill, the No Coffee Tax Act, which is at the desk, that the bill be considered, read 3 times and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object.
I recognize the senator from Idaho.
Thank you. Reserving the right to object. I rise in opposition to S3072, the No Coffee Tax Act. The bill seeks to exempt from the President's IEPA tariffs only a single commodity, coffee. I agree with my colleagues that tariffs generally should be targeted as much as possible to avoid harm to Americans. We also should consider more exemptions to address the harms arising from potential unintended consequences, including exemptions for unavailable natural resources. The administration agrees. The very recent trade deals with Cambodia and Malaysia explicitly exempt coffee and some other mostly unavailable natural resources from the reciprocal tariffs. By all accounts, the administration is working to identify similar exemptions in other active trade negotiations. I strongly encourage the President to pursue productive courses of engagement with U.S. stakeholders in doing so. Voting for one-off exemptions on the Senate floor in isolation of a larger negotiating strategy and broader stakeholder concerns, like S3072 asks us to do so now, does not facilitate a predictable process.
We could have, with that money that we had to pay on that coffee, we could have afforded for kids to have free lunch. We could have did that. That's the kind of waste and fraud I'm talking. That's the kind of waste I'm pissed off about. That we can afford that, we could put that away, and we could help the poor kids.
I think that we have to consider, as the negotiations are taking place, as my colleague talked about, the administration is engaging in.
Why can't we agree upon we need to raise the minimum wage? Why can't we agree upon that? That's something the Democrats and the Republicans can agree on. We should be fighting for minimum wage to go up. The millionaires done made plenty of money off our back. Now it's time for them to help the people in the middle class. Raise the minimum wage from $7.25 or whatever it is. Raise it up to, I don't know, $12, $15. Get free school lunch for the kids. Do something. We have to be able to agree on something. We can't just be fighting back and forth. Okay? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. $15 minimum wage. We gotta find something that we agree on, and we got to start pushing our legislators and our governors and our senators and all that. We got to start pushing them to do stuff for us. Okay, we can't just be sitting here taking this bullshit. Okay, so they're about to end the session. Okay, so I'm about to end this stream. I will be back at 10 o'clock to do what we got to do with the other session, the other stream. Please come back. Please subscribe, hit the like button. Yes, we need term limits. We need all of that. I believe term limits. We could have been done paid for. Got the minimum wage raised. We could have been. This is the richest country in the world. We could be doing better, way better. $40 billion that went out the door to another country. We could have put that back into we could have invested in.
I recognize the majority whip.
I don't know.
Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have 7 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 484.
Okay. So there could have been plenty of things. We could have got high-speed rail. We could have got some of our bridges and our streets fixed, more bridges, more streets, high-speed rail across. Hey, wouldn't you like to be able to take a train or a bullet train like those Chinese people got? You could take a bullet train all over the country. If you paid a fee, you wouldn't have to drive. It could drop you off in California, take you all the way back to Maine, go in and out, weaving in and out, maybe 2 or 3 different trains. I mean, these are things that we need to be fighting for to advance our country. I'm saying we have things that we can stop paying for overseas and then get some things done over here. That's all I'm saying. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I ain't by far. I'm probably the dumbest person that you're going to talk to. But I tell you what, I know we need smart people who know the internet inside and out, who know engineering inside and out, who know housing and people and all kinds of things inside and out better than these people that's in Washington because they only navigate money. We need people who want to navigate how to help the American people. We need those people that are in charge. We need people that'll put the America first. We need our children to be fed. We need every child to have free lunch, something. We need high-speed rail around this country. We need term limits. There's things that we need in this country. And we ain't doing nothing but fighting each other. I'm sick and tired of fighting each other. I'm trying to move our country forward. Okay. Close our border, keep our borders secure, do what we got to do. I don't know. If we can't deport everybody, he's spending more money getting these people out of the country than we are breaking the borders down. We need to do something else. I'm sorry. We just need to do something else. But I will be back. I want you guys to sub to the channel, please. Hit the like button. Stop spamming my hate button. A lot of y'all like to hit my hate button. I don't deserve no hate button. But hit the like button, the share, the subscribe, please and thank you. You are welcome in our new wrench person, Sassy Mo 529. I appreciate you, Sassy Mo, for taking the time because you've been here for the past couple of lives and the past week, 2 weeks over here. So welcome into the wrench family. Thank you very much. Okay. And I will be back at 10 o'clock, guys, because I got to eat, then I come back. Please hit the like and the subscribe. I appreciate it. We just need to come up with some ideas and we need to make our people do the things for us. Okay? We just do. We need them to do things for us. Okay? Because I'm sick and tired of giving our money away to rich people and we not getting nothing in return. Okay? I will see you all later. I'll be back at 10 o'clock. I'll be back. Love y'all, love y'all, love y'all. I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you.